What's up, guys? We're going to do a quick editing session with a photo here of Hannah Sluss. This was shot over at Santa Monica Pier at golden hour with a 42.5 prime lens with f1.2. So the first thing I usually do is head up here to the settings and take a look at the white balance. So there's not really much white here that I can work off of. Maybe the teeth in the Rolling Stone's mouth, but obviously that makes it just way too blue. So I'm just going to eyeball it and tone it down just a tad towards the blue side so her skin doesn't look so orange. Right about there. And then actually, before I do that, I need to go to my presets. And I pretty much never use presets. I have some that I used to use here, but I have this one here called levels. And all it does is add points to my tone curve that I like to adjust the most. So now that that's added, I'm going to go back and make this a little bluer on the white balance. Right about there. And now I'm going to adjust this tone curve. I like a flat look on my portraits. So if you pay attention to the shadows here, making those just a little flatter and then blending it out here, something like that. Now, this tone curve is never the same for any photos. I usually work with the lower end here. Sometimes I mess with the top parts, so mostly just that lower end. And then I just kind of work my way down. So looking at the exposure, I'm going to want this to be a lot brighter. Looking at the shadows, her face and everything are kind of dark, so I'm going to ramp up the shadows and give that some more life. But as I bump that up, you're going to notice that now the sun is a little too harsh in some areas, so I'm going to drop down those highlights. Looks better. Let's see what the whites do here. So the whites are making it stand out real nice, but still some harshness on her cheek and her legs. So we tone down the highlights a little bit. See what the contrast does for us. So if you look, ramp it up too much. I just don't like how saturated she looks when it's high contrast. So I'm going to lower it down just a tad. It just gives that smoother look. And then for the blacks, I like to go left and right and kind of hone my way into a spot that I like. So if I go right, it's like, oh, that's too soft. If I go left, that's too deep. So right about there is a good look that I like, plus 12. So scrolling down, I pretty much never touch vibrance or saturation. There's special cases where I might, but in this case I'm not. My particular camera's color profile for some reason shoots reds. I don't really like how it shoots it, so I make my reds slightly orange. So you can see her skin tone looks a lot more natural there when I bump up the hue. If you turn it to the right, you can see it makes it more orange, and then to the left it makes it more red. So, you know, plus 5 or 10 gives me that natural skin tone. And then drop it down just a little bit here, kind of makes her look less shiny and more tan. Same thing with the orange, kind of drop that down just a little bit, makes her look less shiny, more tan. And then bring down the saturation on this because the sun is only amplifying that orangeness on her skin, and we want to avoid that look because then it just looks like she went and got a spray tan. Alright, so let me check the yellows here, where I like to go hard left and right on my colors when I first start because it shows me where on the photo those colors are, and if you can notice, almost nothing is changing, which means that there's hardly any yellows in this photo, so we'll leave those alone. If you go to green, hardly anything's changing, so leave those alone. Heading to blue, some difference, not too much. I'll ramp those up a little bit. This blue, obviously, there's a lot. So it just depends on what kind of look you want. Sometimes I pull all the blue out, you know, because it's a nice clean look, but I want it to catch your eye. So I think the blue looks really great with that red Beach Bunny swimwear. So I'm going to blow it out just a little bit here, so raising that luminance, but I'm also going to raise that saturation so we bring some of that color back, and then bring it to the right just a little bit, makes it purpled, so all the way to the right is purple, all the way to the left is that annoying teal. Some people like to do this. I feel like that works in very special circumstances, but this much teal just kind of makes me want to throw up. So I'm going to go a little bit to the right and add some purple, and that just deepens out my blues. Let's take a look at the purple here. Not really much of that in the photo, and same thing with this purple. There's a little bit in her skin. You can see it change. So we're probably going to leave that one alone too, because I don't like to adjust skin too much, because once you start messing with those too much, things just start to look unnatural. Clarity, for cars, I ramp it up. For portraits and models, I bring it down usually between 10 and 15 to give it a softer look. Ramping it up only adds detail, so that's really great for something like a car that has smooth and clean edges. So we're going to bring it back down to -12. Vignette, we want to draw your eyes into the subject, so I'm going to bring that shadow in just a tad to add more emphasis on Hannah. So forgot to crop this. She's got a lot of headroom here, so I'm going to bring that down just a little bit, make more Hannah in the photo and less boring sky. Line her up here between the thirds and have about even headroom from foot room, because Instagram's going to chop off some of this on the top and the bottom. Good crop. Might want to make that vignette a little less severe now that we've cropped in. And then noise reduction. I usually don't touch on car photos, but for models, I like to ramp it up quite a bit. So I think 30 is really good. If you've got a really busy photo, you might have to go even to 50, and then I add just a little bit of sharpening to bring some of that detail back. Pretty much never touch grain, so don't even worry about that. Again, this is my style. There's no wrong way to do things. So if you like grain, more power to you. I think it works good for like those folk photos or moody photos, things like that. But I have a very high color, fun, exciting kind of West Coast style, so grain is not my friend. Let's see here. Some options that we have here to make this a little more unique. Now right now, I like how it is, but we obviously want to style it a little bit to kind of add that signature. So I'm going to try to play around with the gradient and see what happens here. Gradients are fun because they can be used to simulate the sun. So if you notice, I add in a little temperature here, warm it up, because the sun's actually coming from the right side of the photo and going to the left, so it wouldn't be unrealistic to add this in. Dropping the dehaze just adds like a fog. You can kind of see it coming in to simulate that sunshine. Make this a little thinner, make that a little more, oh, that's a little too extra, I'm not doing that. Drop that dehaze some. Ramp up that exposure a little bit, see what that looks like. I like where that's going. Drop the contrast. Drop saturation. Make it a little more golden. And I don't really want it on the sand because I don't like the colors that it's doing to the sand over here, so I'm adjusting the angle of this gradient. There we go. All right, so now it kind of looks like the sun's coming in over here. So we'll leave that. I don't always do gradients, but I like what this one's doing. Let me drop the noise a little bit so it just kind of smooths things out. Back to our picture. Now, oops, we're going to zoom into Hannah's face here. And she said that her eyes were one of her most important features, so we're going to work on those for sure. Let me reset these sliders here. And I'm going to use the brackets on the keyboard to adjust the size of my brush tool here. Now, as you can see, I actually already did these eyes. I forgot. If you take a look at it, you can see the difference if I move that away of my work on the eyes. So if I undo that, that's what they look like after they're done. What I usually do to eyes is I'll drop the temperature to make them bluer, to a colder temperature. I drop the saturation to make those whites stand out. I raise the clarity to bring some detail back into the eyes, and I raise sharpness and highlights to make them brighter and add more detail. The next thing, let's see, did I do her face? It looks like I just did the eyes. The only reason the eyes are already done on this is because I get a brush settings that I like for eyes, and I just color correct all the eyes in the entire set at the same time, so I don't have to go back and mess with them. So those are already done for this page. It looks like I haven't done the hair yet or the face. So time to do the face next. We're going to hit this plus for a new brush button. I'm going to raise up my size. I'm going to adjust the feather, make it a little less intense, and then I'm going to raise the exposure. Now this is a trick that I learned so I can see what I'm actually going to be changing. So I can paint her face where I want things to be smoother, basically. So you want to leave detail in her mouth and eyes, so we don't want to paint those. If you can think of where a girl might wear a mask, this is where you're probably going to be painting her face. Don't want to get too close to the eyes here. I know it's going to look like really silly at first, but bear with me. This is just so I can see where I am going to be adjusting the photo, remember? So that looks pretty good there. I might add a little bit down here on her neck. Let's make this brush bigger. Alright, that looks good. Okay, so now we can get rid of that exposure. So now we know everything that's going to be affected by the brush. So I'm going to drop the clarity here. You can already tell she's getting smoother. Raise up the noise, which actually makes it smoother because it's weird. If you go left, it's noisier. If you go right, it's quieter, I guess. Whatever, smoother. But you don't want to go too smooth because then it just looks plastic, and that's also annoying. So find that happy medium. Maybe add a little bit of detail back in with the sharpness. Skin color looks good to me, so we'll leave that alone. Maybe make a tad green to get rid of some of those purples. There we go. Alright, so face looks good to me. Now time for hair. Same thing, grab the brush. Oops. Now, just like I have a brand with my photography, girls have a brand with their looks. So if you do make changes to things like hair and makeup, make sure you're not changing so much that it's just not the same anymore. So if we're doing adjustments to our hair, we want to make sure that it's still kind of keeping that overall look, and it's not changing anything too drastic, because then you're changing the look of your model, and she worked really hard to have her hair that certain way. So we just want to kind of highlight and celebrate the way that it looks instead of change it too much. Sorry, my MacBook keeps giving me the color wheel. I am in need of a new one that has a lot more processing power. Got to get some more shoots before I can do that. And I'm adjusting the size of my brush again with the brackets on the keyboard to paint all sections here. There's a serious lag on this paintbrush, but you know what, that's okay. I'm patient. Alright, that looks pretty good to me, so we'll zoom out, kind of get an overall look of this. Remove that exposure, because we don't need that anymore. Actually, I'm going to reset all these sliders. And I'm going to add some clarity to give some detail to the hair, because while we want her skin smooth, we want that hair to look nice and sharp. So also give some sharpness, bring some color back in, or some detail back into that. Let's see what the highlights look like. I'll bump that up like that. Let's make it slightly more golden to highlight what that sun is doing to it. Don't want to go crazy though, because then it'll start to look blonde. Drop the blacks and increase the contrast. Those are all the tools that I look at when dealing with hair, especially brunette. Blondes, I really like to mess with the highlights, but again, you don't want to change your hair too much. So if you, let me see if I can move this paintbrush. Oh, that's her face. So each of these little blue dots is going to represent adjustments that we've made. So the one on her eye is the one when we painted her eye. The one on her face is obviously her face, and the one on the hair here is the one we did for her hair. Lightroom is struggling so hard to keep up with me right now. Come on. So might have to do, oh, there we go, okay. So I like how this is looking now. We've got the details taken care of in her face. I think the rest of her looks perfect to me, so we're probably not going to have to do anything there. Sometimes, depending on lighting, you might have to go in and do some coloring on legs or arms to try to match what you've done to the face. But in this case, we got perfect even lighting. She really stands out in the photo. Our gradient is realistic, and the final step now is to make some Photoshop adjustments. So if you have a Lightroom, the great thing about having that is it's linked to Photoshop. So I'll right-click on the photo and hit Edit in Photoshop. All right. So some things that we want to do when editing in Photoshop is just remove distractions. So the good news with this particular photo is there's not a whole lot in the shot that's too distracting. The first thing that comes to my eye, obviously, is this graffiti over here in the corner. So I'm going to hit J on the keyboard, which is going to pull up my healing tool here, spot healing brush. We're just going to click and drag over that spot that we don't need. And the more you use the healing brush, the more that you're going to understand how it works and what it can do. So sometimes dragging works, sometimes you have to just click little circles like I am doing now, just a combination of the two. And the same brackets will adjust the size of your brush if you want to make them bigger or smaller. So now that we got that done, I'm looking in the sand for any just odd shadows or anything that can take your eyes away from Hannah. I'm going to make sure we get rid of those things. The buildings in the background are nice and blurred, so that's easy. She has a lot of sand on her legs. We're not going to get rid of all of that because she's always on a beach and it's not that bad. But you know, some of these little patches here that have like really big clumps we can get rid of. We don't need all that. Now the healing brush is great, but you don't want to overuse it because then your photo, again, will just start looking unrealistic. We don't want that. So I think that's enough sand on her legs. So now we're going to move up to her face. And we're going to just look for any kind of spots or anything we could smooth out. A lot of times when you even work with Adobe Lightroom and you make certain adjustments on her face, it's going to make features or things that stand out, that don't normally stand out. So for example, like this glare on her nose, not her fault. There's just the sun that's doing weird stuff there. So I'm still using the spot healing brush. I'm clicking J, and I'm trying to just get rid of glares or any kind of spots where her makeup might have bunched up or anything like that we can figure out. And just FYI, I have to do this on every single model ever, so it's not really unique to Hannah. This is something that I have to do for everybody, myself included, because I've edited photos of myself too, and trust me, there's way more to fix on me than there is on Hannah. So when you use this tool, you want to keep in mind that even though her face is one color to our eyes, it's actually many different shades in real life. So you can see that like the left side of her face is obviously darker and has like a purple hue as compared to the right side of her face where the sun is. And when you start to use a spot healing brush, there's a lot of colors that are blending, and you don't want to make any unrealistic blends. So you have to pay attention where the different parts of her face are and not mix those colors in an unrealistic way. So got a little bit of a highlight here over her lip, getting rid of that. And then cheeks always reflect a lot of sun, so pulling away some of those highlights. And a lot of times people have a little darker spot under their eye, so you want to clear that up. But I think Hannah's are pretty much perfect, so we're not going to even touch that. And nothing else here really needs to be cleaned up. She was easy. Alright, so if we zoom out, take one final look, make sure there's no distractions in the photo. Everything looks nice and clean, lighting looks realistic. We got a little bit of shadows here on the left side, and that looks great. So that's how you do model editing. Go ahead and save this real quick, and when you save that in Lightroom, or sorry, in Photoshop, it's going to automatically pop up in Lightroom right here, just like it did. So now you have a little number 2, which means that your Photoshop edits successfully went in there. So if you look here, we have our before photo from Lightroom, and then if you click the one with the little mountain on it, you have the after with the Photoshop edits, and that's the one that we'll export for Instagram. Thanks for watching, guys. One more thing, of course. If you go to our Lightroom edit, this is a useful tool of Lightroom. Click these little 3 dots over here, and we're going to say copy edit settings. And as you can see down here, I have a lot of shots of Hannah in a lot of different lighting situations, especially since we shot at sunset. But these 3 photos here were all shot together, so they're going to have similar settings. So you can just hit Command V on your Mac to paste those settings onto that photo, and Command V. And now we have a starting point to make these photos good. So you can make minor adjustments if needed, and then take it directly into Photoshop to do all those same adjustments. And then if you're a real pro, you'll grab this brush tool and you will do the hair, face, and eye details that we did on that first one. So that way you can save yourself some time. So yeah, that's editing model portraits at sunset. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll be posting a lot more tutorials soon. Make sure you drop a comment and tell me what you'd like to see so that I can help you guys out.